A few years ago, I saw an exhibition at the Met Breuer Museum in New York on infinite art. The show includes works from the Renaissance to the 21st century, and it really resonated with me. So much so that I bought Hulking's book that accompanied the exhibition. I mean, you can do bicep curls with this thing and get reasonably fit. But when I look at a painting like the Virgin and Child with St. John and the Angels, I'm reminded first that art is made by people. We don't know why it was left unfinished. It could have been a boss who flipped out, or a more interesting opportunity came along. Artists are not like geniuses who are fundamentally different from us, but human beings who live in time and space. Like all of us, great artists make history and are subject to history. As with us, they fail to finish things because they get bored, or because they discover a problem they can't find a way around, or because they get word that a lover is sick and they have to abandon work to take care of them. Still, there can be so much wonder and beauty in infinite art. The figures to our left are just being, almost sculptural in their outline. In the middle of the picture, Mary is trying to keep a book away from the baby Jesus, which 16th century viewers would have known to be part of the book of Isaiah, that tells the story of a Messiah who was bruised for our transgressions and crushed for our iniquities. Even when your child is the Son of God, I guess you still want to protect him from suffering. Other times, the historical significance of a work of art is not so much the work itself as its context. Like in the US, we have a tradition of official presidential portraiture. And with the major exception of Kehinde Wiley's portrait of President Obama, most of these portraits are, I'll put it charitably, competent but uninteresting. It's like, I touch papers. I also touch papers. I prefer to hold my paper, as I do. I touch papers while holding my place in a book, and so on. Anyway, Franklin Delano Roosevelt's official presidential portrait is exactly as you'd expect. It's, competent. But my favorite little FDR painting is this infinite watercolor painted by American artist Elizabeth Shumatov in April 1945. FDR was sitting at a table of maps, and Shumatov had only been painting for a moment, when the president said, "I have a terrible pain in my head," and collapsed. He died later that morning. Shumatov never finished the painting, but she did a finished painting from memory. And in that finished painting, of course, the president is holding his paper. Both paintings romanticize a fresh old man. I mean, the day before, Roosevelt looked like that in a photo. But for me, Shumatov's finished painting is more arresting and powerful than his full painting. It is a proud and stunning reminder that, to paraphrase the last words of another American president, we are all on our way out. The power of the finished painting is partly in its historical context, of course. Je veux dire, si l'artiste était parti à ce moment-là parce qu'elle avait un crâne de main, la photo n'aurait pas eu autant de sens. But then, all art is context-dependent. Really, everything is context-dependent. In a similar vein, I love Benjamin West's finished painting, which was supposed to commemorate the treaty that ended the American Revolutionary War. The leaders of the American independence movement, including Benjamin Franklin, are depicted here. But the British delegation refuses to pose for a photo commemorating their defeat. Other times, the work is not completed because the artist dies. This was the case with Laura Knight's unfinished portrait of Vijaya Lakshmi Pandit, former president of the UN General Assembly, or this painting by Gustav Klimt called The Bride, which was left unfinished when Klimt died in 1918 as a result of a global flu pandemic. And then there is the story of Ford Madox Brown's death, the painting Take Your Son, Sir, which shows his wife Emma carrying their newborn son Arthur. Brown gave up painting in 1857, when Arthur died aged 10 months. In this way, an incomplete painting can be a kind of memory of an incomplete life. When I look at this painting, I am reminded of Kafka's novel The Castle, which was left incomplete when Kafka died at 40 of tuberculosis. The castle stops. She spoke with great difficulty. It was difficult to hear her, but what she said, and that's the end. We will never know what she said, just as we will never know what Arthur's life was like. Incomplete paintings can also be important to curators and conservators trying to hear the story of art. Take, for example, this painting by Perino del Vaga of the Holy Family with St. John the Baptist. you can see the map the artist started, known as underpainting, and in doing so, see some of the techniques used to build perspective and facial features. As curator Kelly Baum said, an incomplete painting is almost like an X-ray that allows you to see beyond the surface of the painting to what lies beneath. Earlier versions, preliminary drawings, all the architecture that is normally disguised and suppressed. In this sense, the incomplete paintings can become a kind of archaeology. Nearly 2,000 years ago, Pliny the Elder wrote in his Natural History that the last works of artists and their unfinished paintings are more admired than those they completed, because in them you see the preliminary sketches left visible and the artist's current thoughts. And then, of course, incompleteness can also be an artistic choice, as is the case with this portrait of Carrie James Marshall, where there is no black in the artist's palette and the work on the background remains largely unfinished. The tradition of intentionally not finishing something, sometimes known in art history circles as non-finito, is widespread in art history. Art historian Carmen Bambach, for example, has argued that this stunning portrait was considered complete, if not finished, by Leonardo da Vinci. And that raises a complex question in art and in life. Does something have to look finished to be complete? My favorite work that explores this question is Alice Neal's James Hunter Blackdraft from 1965. Neal met James Hunter less than a week before he was excused from fighting in Vietnam after being drafted into the U.S. Army. Hunter appeared with Neal only once, who eventually decided to sign the painting and declare it complete. You can feel the worry and weight of being forced into a war, not only in the detailed face of the portrait, but also in its drawn lines. And while Neal's finished paintings often glow with emotional ferocity, this painting is particularly tantalizing because of its unfinished state. And that gets back to art history. During the Renaissance, many artists used the Plinian signature, in which they used the Latin word faciabat to sign their work. Rougemont translates, instead of saying in Latin, "This sculpture was made by me," they would sign, "This sculpture was made by me," implying a permanent completion. In fact, the only time Michelangelo signed a work, the Pietà, he used this incomplete word. The Pietà, of course, looks very, very finished. The crucified Jesus, held by his mother, is so finely stretched that you can see his legs visible under his skin. The Christ exposed by the Gonti is starkly contrasted by Mary's collapsing robes. The abundance of life supports the immediate nature of death. That's a fucking sculpture. But it's the same with those 4 infinite sculptures, also attributed to Michelangelo. The Pietà is made of marble, but these figures seem to be imprisoned in the marble, almost as if they were trying to emerge from it. In these sculptures, known as prisoners or slaves, the marks of chisel and mallet are still evident. L'ami de Michel-Ange, Giorgio Vasari, a écrit que les figures émergent du marbre comme si elles sortaient d'une piscine d'eau.